Alrighty, so you know, Philip, what you're looking at. People who are watching it, they don't. But we have been working on attacking patterns, and last week we went through a whole entire shebang of f7 square and attacks on it. So what I want to do now, and I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, so apologies, I didn't tell you that I will do this, is that I would hope that you would give me a bit of a recap of what you took away from last lesson, and potentially what you are saying might be applicable at points to the position right in front of us, which was admittedly our number one example
Yep.
that we walked through. So what have you got there, sir?
Okay. So what I remember is the following. Um, the f7 square is considered not considered weak, but like it should be looked at as a vulnerability or a target when the following sort of scenario is true. You have a bishop that can attack it. You have a queen that can attack it relatively quickly with check afterwards. You have a knight that can come to g5,
Oh, dude,
and
you're
somehow the
firing at machine gun rate. I can't keep up with the arrows. Go on.
somehow his bishop is weak and the pieces in his army are miscoordinated, i.e., the queen can't hit f7 or defend it, the bishop can't get out to attack or defend f7. This scenario means that it's sacked down. Let's go. Bishop takes f7.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would like to add a little bit of clarity to the last thought that you
Please.
said. So the idea is that when you take and then you replace the bishop with the queen, that black doesn't have the ability to block the check on either of these squares, which is basically a different way to say that usually we prefer this bishop to be blocked in. So this
Right.
knight bishop setup is such that if I give a check here, then neither can interpose.
Yep.
One
Okay.
can't, and the other
That's
one is blocked by the one mentioned before. And so it usually allows us to get very cute in creating dangerous attacks. Now, I'm pretty sure that the viewers of this video would love to see how this works, but because of it's your lesson and we have done this already and you know the whole position inside out, we
oh
are
boy.
going to give that a red hot miss. I will test your
Sure.
memory just on one variation, Philip. Do we remember? No, it was actually King E7. I'm being silly because King 8 was met by knight e6, Queen c4, knight f8. I have got another tab open, so we hear double noises. Check, King E. Do you remember what the final touch to this beautiful attack was?
Oh man, I don't remember it, but I could probably work it out.
Oh boy, I put you on the spot again. Sozzies.
I mean, wow,
I
what
tell you
to
that
do? I
you
don't
really liked the concept.
know.
A week ago,
Okay.
it really spoke to you. You loved it. And as a
That's
matter of
amazing.
fact, I actually showed it to you with knight going here because it was even clearer. Oh, shivers! I didn't do that. Did you see something?
I don't know. I didn't know. It's
No,
nothing.
I totally know that you didn't see me executing last week's plan. That wasn't there, was it?
um, damn. I
Damn.
don't remember that though.
Yeah, so the idea was that we take this pawn allowing a rook check. And that's where when
Right.
you notice that if black does blah, then after check bishop blocks, we have this check because the bishop is pinned, and you really like this idea. Because
I do, yes.
rumor has it that you like to win queens.
And I also like the fact that if he takes the queen, I recapture with some sort
Yeah,
of a
so
fork
the
down.
reason why we can sort of halt the attack here and play a somewhat quiet move is because now we are just taking the kitchen and the sink, so they can't trade queens in that point.
Right.
Alright,
Perfect.
so with that thought, we are going to somewhat wrap up, for the time being at least, our investigation of how and when to attack on f7, and we are going to move on to g7. And I have never done this thematic square to square, um, sort of looking at very thematically how to
Approach,
attack.
yeah.
And yeah, basically it's a very new approach to me, but I think that this was the way how I could get you out of your comfort zone, which was limited to a very select few patterns, and almost
Right.
none of them were sacrificial. So now we are
That's
moving
fair.
on to g7, And I've really purposely made the first one very, very brutally clean. So as you can
Okay.
see, the whole position really does not give the impression of something particularly complex. But we are going to start from simple and we are going to go towards the more complicated. In fact, I should have put one position between this and the next one because this is very, very simple. The next one is going to be, whoa boy, next level. So, how would you take it from here, sir?
Um, huh. I mean, it's G7, right? So is a sack warranted without calculation?
Yes, so what would we do after bishop takes g7, king takes back?
Right. Um, we have a queen check on G5.
Mm-hmm.
One
Which then
on
forces.
E5 doesn't work.
Nah, but nah. Definite g5. So queen g5
Yeah,
check, king goes back to the corner.
yeah.
At,
Plus the
it,
queen covers that square. So
yeah.
yeah.
At which point you know that you have got perpetual check.
Right. So I do.
For
Um,
which I would bite your head off.
that's fair. Okay, so queen G5 check, king H8. Uh, are we not? Are we too late to do something like rook D4?
Dude, we're never too late. We were born ready and on time. Indeed, check and rook d4. And that's it.
Right. You're
That
dead.
is
There's
really
nothing
it.
to do.
One more thing that I would like to point out to you is that there is an extra layer usually to this attack when the king tries to run away here. And that extra layer very often is that you go in here, threatening a mate on f7, which usually is
Right.
met by something like this. And then you just take this and mate threat he usually mops up.
Right. That's quite nice.
In this case, they can still walk out of the mate, but they lose the queen.
And there's nothing to be said for queen H6 first instead of all of this to just avoid the king running away. So yeah,
You meant here?
yes.
Yeah, no, this is a valid idea. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for a myriad of reasons. Bishop e4, rook e4, they all
Right.
clog up your
It's a
way.
bit too slow.
Potential
It's a bit
f5
too slow.
also covers it, so no. You have to go check, 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 check.
Right.
Now, what you already notice here, Philip, that is a stark difference compared to the f7 hacks, is that in order to sufficiently destroy them on g7, almost always you will have fewer defenders around the king. And the reason for that is because it's very difficult to sack on g7 something without having a clear path.
Right.
So usually, as per previous examples, there was a knight here, bishop here. They clog up this part of the board very heavily. And so
That's true.
the most important, or rather I should say that the most common attacking pattern, which ironically I don't think I've got any among my examples, and I'm going to clear the board for you, usually occur from a situation, and I'm just going to model now the absolutely necessary pieces, and I think this is getting real messed up in OBS. Yes, it is, but I will quickly chuck it out on the big board. So in a position like this, or something like that, where the pieces are laid out like that, we very often kick the knight out. I'm just going to move
Right.
random now. Thus, as
Right.
you can see, clearing the king side entirely. And now I am ready to attack and ready to join. And usually the pawn also has a very great impact on the
Right.
in the attack by virtue of covering f6 square. Good old Kasparov, whom I quote all the time as the greatest attacker of all time, said once that a knight on f4, f5 if against a castled king is worth 4 points, not 3. And he also
Wow.
said that a pawn on e5 against a castled king, he counts that as a piece, not as a pawn. Because so often it contributes so much to the attack against the king by virtue of A, kicking a knight out, thus reducing the defenders, but also
Right.
because very often we can then utilize the f6 square. So this
Right.
correlation is something to be remembered. Now, this also underlines what I'm telling you, that g7 is harder to attack, because also to have a knight on f5 as opposed to g5 like in the f7 examples that we looked at is a lot harder to get to, because normally when you
Right.
start a game you have a knight here and a knight here. Almost in all openings you develop your knight to f3 and you are already
Yep.
ready to attack these two with knight g5. To get to f5, one of the knights have to go on a bit of an excursion. Ironically,
Right.
quite often it's actually this knight that ends
Wow.
up on f5, like in the Ruy Lopez. I have done a few videos, in fact one of the Inside My Heads, or the Amateur's Mind, where I talked about the bishop g4 motif in the Ruy Lopez and why it's bad against these three systems. I executed this maneuver to get the knight to f5. In the Sicilian, we often sack a knight on f5 by coming knight f3, d4, and f5, but as you can see, they take more moves. So these are somewhat rarer, but the damage they deliver is far larger. Now the next example is going to be an absolute stunner. And this is already, like I said, I skipped a few levels between 1 and 2.
Sure.
So here, prepare for the best. This is going to be so entertaining and so fun. I mean, the position is begging for violence. You can see how many boxes we can already tick from what I told you before. No pieces in the vicinity at all. We have an f5 knight trained onto the g7 pawn. We don't have an e5 pawn, warranted. But we do have a dark squared bishop that can operate this way and this way. And we have we have a heavy ready to join the party somewhere here, and the queen is also unobstructedly, if that's even a word, looking towards the king side. Let me rephrase that. The queen's view is unobstructed towards the king side. Do you think I should teach chess or English? Sorry, I digress.
Yeah. So, like, I would have thought this is almost a candidate for attacking on h6, like, because of
and I have to give you credit for saying that, and also I need to mention the fact that attacking g7 and h6 often walk hand in hand. And I really do regret, Philip, that I showed you my game the other day, because I wanted to close the session with that, because that is actually to taking the same concept to a new level in a different layout where there's nothing on g7 but the attacking procedure essentially remains the same. So yes, you can consider munching on both.
Right. The one comes with a check as well.
However, I wanted to make your life easy, so I didn't want to mess with knight h6 check yet.
Right, so let's go for g7.
So obviously that has to be taken. So the question is how we continue the attack afterwards.
Yep. Check on d4 seems logical, unless we're giving up more pieces and taking on h6.
Okay, let's deal with bishop d4 check, although if you were my student, then you would know that this is what I expect you to look at first, because that's a capture and a check, and thus the most forcing move. But it's easier to eliminate this than this, funnily enough.
Right.
Because after bishop d4 check, black has what? What's the most convenient way to deal with the check?
Right, you can just play f6.
Correct, and then we don't seem to have an obvious follow-up. So let's cast our eye on this hyper sexy bishop takes.
Double sack.
Oh,
lovely.
Just wait for what you call it, sir, because there might be surprises lurking still around about number of pieces thrown into this mayhem.
Right.
Dude, we're running out of pieces. We go through this theme of attacking patterns with you, and from here on all I will see is that you're sacrificing 17 pieces in a row in every single game. And you're like, what happened with my pieces, dudes? They're gone. I need a new chess set.
Okay, so knight g7, king takes g7, bishop h6 check, king takes h6, and we need a move.
We do.
Do need a move.
Ideally a check.
Trying to find a check. There's rook h5, which I don't think is viable.
Why
I
not?
might be wrong. It pulls the king further out, which is probably always a good thing. It also allows...
Totally. Like you already go like, whoa, baby, bring it on.
Right.
Do you have
Rook
a
h5
follow-up check?
check. King takes. I was hoping there was, but like the f5 square is covered by the bishop.
Go further.
G4 is also covered by the bishop.
Correct. When you said queen f5 check didn't work, I said go further.
Right. I do actually have h7, don't I?
Yes, you do,
Funny
Philip.
move.
And the beauty of that check is that it denies the black king from going back.
Wow. Okay, so he has to go out further, like to g4 or something like
No,
this.
I
Yeah,
can go here. Remember that this is a corner already.
can go there too. Yes.
So that means that g5 is available. What? Now, here's what I have to tell you, Philip. On your level,
Wow.
and I don't mean any offense, you more or less start losing the position in your head after queen h7 check. Like you were already unclear about whether the king could go here or not because you forgot that we sacked this guy away, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's
So
fair.
at that point, you need to make a judgment call. Am I
Right.
gonna be
Is it
able
good
to
enough?
even mate or not? Now, given that there is a totally naked king out on the fifth, and you know that this is how we ideally should be playing chess all the time, you will go like, bloody earth, it's gonna go. Let's go, kaboomski. Now, if you
I
can,
mean, I've got 3 pieces right left that can attack. I
yes,
suppose
but because of the king is forced so far out, all the pawns count now as attackers
can
too.
also. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
if you have time, Philip, a lot of time, then I would encourage you to try to dig deeper despite of the difficulties, because that could clarify. Recalculating the line a number of times would clarify such things like, this bishop is actually not on the board. But
Right.
then perhaps I could encourage you to calculate a line that would go like this: queen h7 check, king g5, f4 check, king f6,
Yep.
knight d5 check, picks off the queen. Philip is happy.
Ouch. Very nice.
And that again gives you a great sense of relief, because that means that the most obvious plan to run back to safety will always be rained upon by this knight fork.
Right.
So now we have added another layer of surely this is gonna work thought to the already existing concept. So let's have a look at it. Takes, fabulous, check, beauty. Now there is no point really to not to take this, because the rook is going to join the party, and that's a deadly effect. And boy, this check just takes the cake.
Yeah, this is rough.
Holy dooly, man. And again, you can clearly see that in this position, you have... Actually, no, I want you to find this.
I mean, there's...
Which check is the cleanest win here?
Or
is it a check?
Or is it a check? Oh man. If I play knight d5, it denies the e7 square, it attacks the queen, and it sets up a mate in one thread, does it not?
It does.
Yes, it
Certainly. Who is your chess coach?
Damn, deserves a raise.
Boy, I rock in the house. Knight d5. Beautiful icing on the cake. Exactly as per you said. I only put the arrows there because I knew what you would say. See?
Oh,
and
very
queen
nice.
e5 is not possible because it hangs, so the queen can't defend back there.
Right. Ouch.
That was a neat motive, so it had to be captured. Check. And knight d5 now. Now, this is a result of very thorough calculation that is based on the idea that we actually want to use this tempo on the queen, not to win the queen, but to disallow the king to escape and keep it in the vicinity. Now,
As a benefit, this kind of only move as well because you don't want to allow trades at this point in your attack.
correct,
So
correct.
you have
So
to.
if I go back here, there is an amazing mate motif that is essentially unstoppable, which is something like king g2, f4, king here, and pawn h3.
Oh wow, that is
Which
nice.
is not bad at all, right? Alternatively, we have got f4 he check he mate,
Damn.
and I think that this mate is actually happening here.
Yeah,
So after
yeah.
95, there was no way for black to avoid the
Nothing
mates.
to be
Do I
done
have
here.
any fancy lines here? Oh yes, queen c5 is a variation which pins the pawn.
Smart.
And so now we go check, king here, king here. And the real sucker about this move, this is an absolute beauty, man, because this walks into check.
Yeah, it does. But you can counter check
And then
with
counter
almost mate.
check, checkmate. Better still, it also walks into this pin, denying f3 mate. What do we
Oh
have now,
man.
Phillip, that is mating one again?
No pressure, right?
No, no, I mean, yeah, just on record, and you have to find a mate in one that if you don't, then, yeah.
Queen G7 looks. Oh
Care-
no, it does not.
Careful with
Doesn't
that.
cover H5.
And f5.
Yeah, and F5. Where's my mate then? Uh, don't have pieces. Oh, I've got a knight that I
Yeah,
can
you do.
use actually. Knight F6 check. Where does he go? Dead.
To the canteen
Dead.
to cry a river and have something very strong because, boy, you don't very
Very
often
nice.
get knocked out like this.
Like, what are you minus in this position? You're like down everything.
Oh, it's more, after 95, you are. Actually, queen b6 is only move. Because that's the move that pins the pawn and denies knight f6 check.
That's unreal.
Needless to say that the best move against it is to not to take it. Now we have a mate threat here.
Just keep going, eh?
Well, when you have a king on g4 mate, it's fairly safe to say that you're not to survive the upcoming mess.
What does the evaluation bar do if you actually take the queen? Like, I'm guessing it swings to his favor now.
No. Taking the queen is still legit because the king is so exposed. In fact, it hardly
Right.
changes. Yeah.
Wow, that's unreal.
Yeah, it's death. But boy, this whole sequence, knight g, king takes, bishop h6, king takes, and then rook h5.
Yeah, that one's hard to see. The rook h5 is
That was next level.
hard to consider rather than not hard to see.
Yes, that's pretty much
Like,
it.
I would just stop my calculation and be like, okay, I've given up too much for too little.
I have to say, Philip, that although we are now learning about how to attack and crash opponents on g7, this was just well, it happened to be the way to go, but that's not typical. This is typical.
It's not common. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. I realized that I only showed you last time examples from the white side, but really we are looking at the respective f2, f7, and g7, g2 shebang. So this is the setup that is the most frequently seen when it comes to various sacrifices on these two. And you can see, and you in fact correctly observed it, that very often when we can sack on g2, we can sack on h3.
Right. Now, this knight on f4, this is the equivalent 4-point knight.
Correct. As per good old Kasparov said, f4 knight is 4 points.
Okay. So obviously, take on g2 is the way to go here, although in a game I would consider both, I suppose.
Well, the only difference why I would prefer to take on g2, because knight h3 can't be recaptured because of that, right, is because this does far more destruction.
Right.
Also, after knight h3, if I ask you what your follow-up move is, you don't have an instant response. After knight g2, f3 knight is hanging.
Yeah.
So this has a lot more oomph.
Right.
But what's the follow-up after king tak?
Also, yeah, like a bishop sack on h3 would be a candidate. Okay, knight takes g2, king takes g2. I have a check on g6 now. Queen g6 check. And I actually like that the rook is there on f1 because it means that he has to go back.
Correct. Having said that, after queen
To
g6 check, you have check. Oh, wow, that was a Freudian. The queen g6 check can't really be followed
Yep.
up with anything substantial, Philip. So we need to again look at. You chose again the wrong candidate move based on your silly coach's teachings. What's the correct way to go?
Right. Sorry. Apologies.
You should be.
I mean, I actually did like the fact that the king only has h2 in that position, right? Like he
They have
can't move.
h1 as well. Not
Oh,
to
yes, they
mention
do.
the fact that I could technically blockade as well, although obviously that gets picked up.
Right. In which case, we have to follow up with a bishop h3 check, which is obvious. To capture as a check is everything we should do.
Mm-hmm.
So bishop h3 check, king takes h3. Queen takes f3 check.
Of course.
As a follow up. No?
Yep.
Makes sense.
King goes back to h2.
King h2, and now we need something good.
That next move, Philip, is really hard. Is really hard because you only have these two pieces left, and they are both 75 kilometers away from the white king.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't want to give you a bigger hint than that yet.
Okay, so knight g2, king g2, bishop h3, king h3, queen f3 check, king h2. Checks here.
None.
None.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
once again, you have got the check perpetual.
Right.
But that's only good enough for, well, you know,
right.
fire of hell for eternity.
Right. Then I have to look at captures. So
sadly, none.
Yeah, like bishop
I mean,
takes
you can
e3,
take
but
e3, but that just enhances the defense.
Yeah. So then I need to look at threats. Like I need to bring more pieces, set up some sort of a threat.
The big question, Philip, is that which piece can we bring
How? How?
in a reasonable pace, meaning in a mighty hurry?
Right. That's tough. If I go like rook fe8, he can deny the lift to e6 with something like.
Yeah, and that's just screaming to be way too slow.
Too slow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like both moves of the rook can get denied. So maybe I can go rook a6.
Look at you, beast.
Wow, and then the idea, I suppose, is to play knight b4, attacking the queen with a tempo.
I would rather go d, just because I'm a central maniac.
Or d, yeah.
But boy,
bishop takes, and then we're clearing the.
Boy, this
is
the
rank.
Next level.
Wow, clear the sixth, and he's dead here, right? Like there's no.
Yeah, I think the only legal move is queen d1 here. Yeah. Because any other move allows knight jump and mate. Oh.
Right.
Actually, the mate threat is check and then rook mate.
Okay.
So, tick, tack, check, mat.
Good.
Yeah.
Denying f3 escape. That's so nice.
Yep, exactly. So, they went back to queen d1, which is obviously their only response. We take on e4. And at
Right.
this point, we calmly conclude that we have got 3 pawns. The attack is still raging, although c5 admittedly is a little bit hanging. But when was the last time we cared about material?
Yeah, you don't really like. Your next move is to give up the
You
knight as
don't.
well.
I
So
certainly don't. But you care even less, being a good student of mine. So what was the move again?
in this position,
Oh yes.
um, let's see. Can he say I'm getting mated? I play like knight d4,
Sir, you know how to play this game. You don't need silly chess coaches anymore. It's mate.
queen h. Yeah,
Was
like can he
played.
stop this?
Actually, I think they resigned here, but Queen
Queen h5 or
h5
something.
is the only way to stop this whole shebang. But even here, I would say after check and the rook comes across, this is gonna get
Yeah.
dirty. So
Ouch.
yeah, rook is incoming. Not sure if the engine would approve. Engine instantly wants to take the queen,
Fair enough.
which is a bit
Yeah, fair
greedy.
enough.
Having
It's
said
just
that, here they go oopsie daisies. Wait for it. Check first.
ouch, man.
King back here, and now we have got a check,
Taking it.
check, checkmate threat. So this is immune.
Damn. Yeah, I've been doing mate in twos this week, not mate in threes. I'm sorry, I didn't see that one.
that kind of helps to recognize these. Now, I had only one trouble, Philip, with this puzzle, which I would like to show you right now. Are you good at memorizing stuff?
Depends what we're memorizing.
Like
Um,
this position?
yeah, I think I'm okay at it.
So you could set it up from here.
Why you have to be like this?
Okay, I will give you a little helping hand. But I wanted to alter the position a little bit because I wanted to show you a motif. So I'm going to do certain things for you just because I pretend to be nice. Where was
Are
it?
you going to ask me what's different now?
Sorry?
Are you going to ask me what's different now?
Not quite, no.
Um,
What I'm going to do, I could do that, uh,
like the
but I'm
it's actually quite similar.
but I'm
There
nastier.
was a pawn on there was a pawn on h6 in the previous one, which is now not on h3 in the equivalent.
Correct. So what I changed is that I put the pawn back on h2, and
Yeah.
the king back on g1. And the reason why I did that, Philip, is because I wanted to model your difference. Or rather, this is a more typical way to get this position.
Ah,
Okay, and this case, what we made work in the other position works even better. Because what happens here after knight takes, king takes is that when you land this check, when I take, I can no longer go back like in this position I did.
right. Because the pawn is
Because
there.
the pawn is there. So I have to go up, which obviously leads to an
Steps
imminent
into bishop
disaster with
six.
check,
Yeah.
check, 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 checkmate. You saw that.
I did now. That's amazing.
So what I just wanted to tell you, or rather to let you know, that this also happens a lot like this when the check brings about even more damage. And in fact, I did have a game like this, which I also
Wow.
posted on YouTube earlier on. I really need to find that, where the defending move is King G3. I'm
Why?
not kidding. And now it's actually in this particular position, it's not apparent to me how black is winning.
Right.
Because I couldn't force the king to go that way. Taking the rook would only net me 2 pieces. So I'm not even sure if it actually works here. Let's have a look. It does apparently because this side motif on a4. But that's such an
Ah,
unlikely
trap,
story, man. I mean,
trap
normally
bishop is like.
you would have a pawn here for white when we would be totally. So just out of curiosity, if this is here, oh no, we are still fine. And the reason for that is because we can take and then after queen g6 check, the king still gets stranded. And note that
Right.
this check still denies that because then the check picks off the knight. So I still have to come here. And then f5
Ouch.
will open up the party. But note
Right.
again
And then
how
you
we're
can bring
just hanging
it.
pieces like it was totally normal. The reason why a4 worked here beautifully was because after bishop a4 queen e6 we are attacking this and it's mating one here.
Right. Can't both be stopped.
Oops. But anyway, I
Oh,
wanted to show you this motif because it's such a beauty, even if there is no pawn on h3.
the irony is, it's almost easier if the king's pawns haven't moved. Is that right?
Yes, yes, you are correct. So, because of g2 sacks come with such destruction, like I said before, unlike sacks on the sacrifices on the sides, they don't entirely shatter the position. So sometimes you survive that, but with knight g2, this king will never ever be secure again. So this is the
Right.
most destructive out of all the three. Uh,
Out of curi-
yeah,
Out of curiosity, is mm, knight h3
it doesn't do a thing.
any good here? If he steps out of it, if he takes it, I
Yeah, it
suppose.
doesn't have the forcing power of knight takes g2.
Right, right.
All right, moving on. I brought you a few games because
Awesome.
I wanted to, unlike in the previous 8 examples or 7, where I modeled everything from a position, I think it's also necessary for you to see how we get there. But I
Right.
will mostly fly through the opening, especially because the majority of it is actually opening theory. Like here, we are still in theory.
Wow, castle long. I like it.
Matter of fact, I'm not a Caro-Kann expert, but I prefer Queen A5 check here for black because that, as far as I'm aware, forces Bishop D2 back. And then after Queen
Okay.
C7 castles, black actually has got this diagonal under control, Knight F6 and so on. On Knight F6, Bishop D6, theoretical main line. But the way he did it, with Bishop check, it allowed white to retain the control of this diagonal, which discourages castles that way quite a bit. So
Right.
white castled, of course, king b1, and castles. And usually when black castles kingside in this setup, he is subjected to some ferocious attacks. Knight e5, because they learned the center from me. c5, queen f3. Less so to target the pawn, more so to get out of the d file, so that we can create this semi-pin, and also some sort of tension is already building. Queen
Right.
b6, tuck tuck, d5. Love the move. Serves Philip one pure purpose, and that purpose is to clear this square.
Ah, look at that.
Because what did our good friend
Wow.
Kasparov tell us? That knight on f5 is worth 4.
Right. Talk about improving your pieces, huh?
Aha. So now you have got a very fearsome trio already aimed at the king, and essentially zero
Right.
defenders. Although technically they are in the vicinity, but they need to make moves in order to become sufficient defenders of the king. Dude plays
Right.
bishop f6, rook takes d5. Note again, similarly to the very first example, second, sorry, no.
Yep.
In fact, both.
First,
First and second, we
second,
had a rook
second.
that was either ready to
Yeah.
jump in here or ready to jump in here. Now this dude arrived to the
Yeah.
tempo too. Queen
Oh
e6,
wow.
bishop takes. And this, Philip, is going to be the beginning of one of my all-time favorite puzzles, because it features an incredibly unique and absolutely breathtaking mate motif. For the record, we are following the game Mealman against Fang.
Okay.
95 was played. Um,
Wow.
really, really, really nice stuff. If they take back, what do we do, Philip?
I was going to ask. um. Hmm. Bishop is annoying on f6. Otherwise, we had like a mate in two.
Correct.
Um. Queen g4, king g8, and I don't.
You meant king h8.
Yeah, sorry, h8. And I don't see anything really.
Okay, I will give you a little hint, Philip. Right now, the black setup is perfect and compact. So
Right.
what you need to do is just a tiny, teeny, weeny adjustment
Oh, look at that.
to
Hit the bishop,
disrupt
hit the queen.
the harmony among the black pieces. And now if the queen goes up, you pick off the knight with the attack still raging on. If the queen goes back here, now we can pull a really, really nice, sexy. What would that be?
Isn't this mate in 2 after rook takes f6 now? Or do I miss something
Very
after
good
that?
chess, Philip. Rook takes f6, and then the mate is incoming.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
this is a subtle touch because people would be very trigger happy here to take or to go check, and
Yeah.
this is a subtle extra touch. Not sure if that's the best move, by the way. I never checked this with the engine. Yeah, but I am the engine. Very humble, always correct. That's me.
Yep.
Just like the engine. So that's why the bishop didn't get accepted. Instead, he went knight e5, which is an excellent defending move, by the way. It centralizes a piece. It tries to disconnect the queen from these two. Love this move.
Mm,
Had to.
strong.
Had to
No
go
choice.
here.
Yep.
Goes back, offers a queen trade.
Yep.
White went like, uh-oh. Oh, wait a second. Oh,
Suppose you could offer some sort of repetition here. Huh?
something tragic happened here, Philip.
Did you lose some moves in your study?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
I did lose some move in
uh,
the study, but luckily
this is equality because of the repetition.
Hey?
Is this equality because of the repetition?
Yes. But luckily, I'm going to save the day by showing you that here he went queen g4. Takes. And now I need to remember, dude. I think he took. How did he get the 94?
Yeah, this
How did you get in
this sort of stuff.
the 97 check? Boy, this is embarrassing. So takes there. Now somehow 97 check was played.
Wow.
Actually, what did black do here, Philip? He allowed here 97 check, which if it was white to move it would work instantly.
Right.
Because now if it's white to move, 97 check, queen takes allows mate in 2. If bishop takes, we win the queen.
Right. Yeah.
Is this one? No. Unfortunately, it was the other window where I had this game open.
That's why it was open.
I want to be fully. Oh, actually, haha. I will say.
Control Shift T if you're brave.
I will save the day. No, the queen landed on d3. How did the queen land on d3? Huh. No, this got taken here.
Oh, and then you have a check.
That's it. I'm being an idiot. Oh my word. Embarrassment at the finest. Queen g4 was played. Queen takes d5. Bishop takes here. Check.
Ouch.
King here. 97. Oh, sorry, 95. Sorry, I'm being doofus. 95. Because 97 makes no sense, right? I just take a check. 95 was the defender's idea to attack the queen.
Right, but this actually allows.
This allows a force mate in 1, 2, 3, 4. All checks.
Wow.
I will play out the first move for you. It's 97. And by the way, just so that we stick with the theme, you realize that actually we didn't sack on g7, but the f5 knight, by virtue of creating tremendous pressure on these squares, you can see how we eventually ripped black apart on those squares.
Right.
G7 and h6, where we deliver the deadly blows. And again, the knight is the star of the show. Now we have got Philip, one of the most beautiful mate in threes in chess history. No pressure, no pressure.
Is it? Oh man, I feel like it has to be Queen G6.
Well, you know as my student that if you are not sacrificing your queen, you are not playing
it has to
chess.
be.
So what
Just
happens
has
if
to be queen.
takes?
If pawn takes, we can recapture with a pawn, and it's a double check.
Which forces me to take here.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need to give me a mate in 1.
Is rook h7 not killing us there?
Yes, it is, sir. Check this out.
Wow.
Like, that mate
Wow.
was worth to be born alone. If you have not accomplished anything else in your life at all, but you play this
That
game
is,
as white, you're done. You are
yeah,
done.
you're done.
You have achieved more than
That's it.
most. That's the way I see it. Mr. Millman just scored
I guess it's the
the
same as if he takes with a knight,
the
right? Like it
mate
doesn't
of.
make
Oh,
a
absolutely.
difference.
That's the greatest beauty is that g6 can be captured by 3 different pieces, but the mate doesn't
And it doesn't matter.
change.
Yeah.
It is just a
Man.
stunning beauty.
Wow.
Not bad,
Huh.
eh?
Okay.
Not bad.
So they reached this from Rui Lopez, is that right?
The Rui
Or like,
Lopez one was my game that I showed you. This one is another one. This one is Gaprin Dashvili Nikolat, which is ironically the same variation, but here both sides are playing the opening rather poorly. Like I4 is a bit of a lemon, especially because white is meant to castle this way, but also for that reason
yeah,
C3 has gone out of fashion in favor of Bishop D2.
this is the line you showed me earlier, yeah?
Yeah, so it's the same line, and this is where the show begins. Dude plays knight f5. Because she heard about
Okay.
Kasparov too.
And apparently it's also fine if there's a pawn on e6.
Yeah, well, the tactics prove it because she plays the rook on e1, so ef knight takes, rook e7 is plenty good.
Right.
So the dude goes rook e8, and the sack fest begins, Philip, and you will find again significant similarities between this and one of our previous examples. The problem here is, I'm not kidding you, is virtually the abundance of possible sacrifices and their correct order.
Oh man. Yeah, I hear you.
But since you know what the topic of the day is, therefore your job is far simpler than
Like,
those who have
knight
it in
takes
the
six,
game.
f7 looks good to me. Just knight takes f7 looks really good.
Knight
But
takes
okay.
f7 does look very good, but since we are discussing
Yeah,
g7 sex, we will focus on that one.
All right.
I tell you why. I'm guessing you wanted to do this.
Yeah.
That was exactly what you wanted to say. I know that. Now,
I didn't get that far, but
of
yes.
course you did.
Right.
Of course you did. The
That's
problem
nice.
with this is that I can counterpunch you.
Ouch.
And that hurts.
Oh, that hurts. Yeah, that does hurt.
That does hurt. So for that reason, we start the Sakharino fest like this.
This way.
And after takes, which is more or less forced, we continue with what, sir?
I mean, bishop takes h6 is so far the thematic move.
All right. Well, let's not break with well-working traditions.
Tradition, right? All right. So bishop takes on h6, king takes h6, and now we need a follow-up. We have knight takes f7 check. We could also just bring. Actually, that allows the rook to come in, doesn't it? So
let's go with
a temper
when it's
as well.
a check and a capture. I really doubt that you can
find better.
Come at me with something even better.
Oh, right, because this also allows h7, queen h7 check with the queen after.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so bishop takes, king takes, knight f7. And what you need to see there, Philip, is that if I go back, then
g6.
The next check is g6, and when I go back
g6,
to f8,
yeah.
which is my only legal move, then you move the horse back, and f7 mate is unstoppable.
Right.
So this is what it looks like. Check,
right.
and just bring the horse here.
and there's nothing that can be done. That's unreal.
Actually, I play the only losing move, so I'm very talented because
I'd love to know why.
this is a defensive
uh,
source. I really wanted to be very
okay,
clean, and that's how I fell for my own trap because I didn't even want to allow the queen sack to stop the mate. But in
right.
fact, we have to.
Okay.
We have to. Knight g5.
So you play knight g5, and he's sort of almost forced to take
Not
it. Yeah,
almost,
that's what you say.
100%. There's no other way to stop mate.
Right.
I rather should say stop mate z.
Yeah.
So takes is forced. And then black is dead lost here. There is no king to speak of. And
Yeah.
so
Six is
he
hanging soon.
decided to give her a bit of a harder time by playing king takes. And now what is
I
our
like that.
best check, Philip? Which, needless to say, she did find.
um, da, da, da. Hmm. Okay, so there are how many checks on the board? There's g4, there's rook e5, there is
Well, I
some
would
queen
I would suggest that you don't look any
checks.
further. Let's choose one from the
Right,
previously mentioned two.
right. Um, rook e5 looks like the most forcing one to me. Knight takes.
I don't see what you hope to achieve with rook takes knight takes. g4 looks very scary because it opens up our own king. But we know really and fully well that no one cares about such things. We care about
Right,
variations. Now, after g4, if
knight
knight
takes
takes,
g4.
we have mate in 2. Can you tell me that, please?
Ah, I do. I mean, knight takes g4 is actually met probably by queen h7 that's now available. It wasn't before. There might be something else.
Well, queen h7, you said?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry,
that
not
seems mate enough to me.
yeah. So queen h7. Um, where do you go exactly? Oh, that's dead.
Mm-hmm.
You're dead completely. Okay, so he has to take with the king, right?
Yep. Well, if they take it
Um,
with a king, then you have got this checkerino.
man,
And that's no less impressive. King h4, king g2, and mate.
ouch. And he can't run the other way. Suppose not, right?
This way?
So f4. Yeah,
I guess they can.
f4. This
Check out this. Oh, I should have asked you
queen
to find
g3.
this.
Oh man. Oh, another mate in two.
Boy,
It's right up my
oh
alley this
boy.
week.
Yep.
Stunning.
I will add you to this study, Philip, if I haven't yet. I can't help it, Philip, but brag a little bit. And I know that I
Awesome.
did show you this, but now I'm going to add a little bit of a talk about this game to it so that we understand how we develop this whole G7 concept. So as I told you, in the Spanish, it is quite commonplace that this knight is directed that way. For that
Right.
very reason that it very effectively attacks G7. So you can hear that this is quite a good quality game. The viewers can't see it. Actually, I could switch scenes, but let's just say that I played this against the 2400. And here I am already headed for set square. Now, he prioritizes not to allow me to get in there, which is very smart, right?
Yeah, I
But it
understand
comes
now.
at a cost of a lot of weak dark squares in the vicinity. Now a little bit of
Yep.
toing and froing goes on, some developing moves, some trades. I'm actually not playing this part of the game well at all because I should have refrained from that trade, but whatever. And at this point, like I told you yesterday, I formulated a plan to come here and sack the knight. Because I'm
Right.
desperate to have a knight on f5. That's my everything.
Yeah.
But I thought that after knight h4, right here, sorry, I need to switch to analysis board, he would have bishop c8 cutting it off. which is why I thought I would
Yes.
outsmart him by playing a4. And if he takes, I take, forcing him to play the developing knight d7, which is shutting the bishop's view towards f5. And now I played knight h4 with the idea of sacking like mad. And it's fully sound and in fact unstoppable. The coincidence, correctly known as coinky is that once the knight lands on f5, told you I needed to teach English, not only these two are hurting, but this one here too, further creating very nasty forks.
Forks.
So
Yeah.
I dropped back, I went in, and in this position, according to the engine, I should have taken this and mop up everything. But I got very excited about this mating attack here, which I thought it was a mating attack. Turned out that it
I
was not really playable.
I think you have to go for this though. Like,
Well, it was so attractive. I so liked it,
yeah,
and
exactly.
it just misses by an inch. That after here now the bishop is pinned, I can't take the rook, and if check, then back, and all of a sudden my attack ran out of
That's
steam.
nothing.
This
That
sucks. So I should have
yeah.
taken d6, but boy, we now had the mate. Now I missed the mate here, to be fair, because I thought that after knight h6, which I did see threatening mate, I thought he walks away. Turns out not.
Oh,
Turns out not the case. Queen g5 is forcing
but
mate.
he doesn't. Yeah.
So there is a mate here. There is a mate here.
Wow. So the bishop on a4 is actually doing a
Yeah,
lot of
it
work
is
here.
actually doing some hard yards. Instead, I saw that if I eliminated this, then I could eliminate that, and then this would be a mate. So I went for takes, allowing the rook to be taken with check, but then sacking on g8 because I saw that I had this cute check checkmate motive. Check it out. Check. Once again, note how the f5 knight is a super pain. Here, check, and now if he blocks the check, it's mate. If he comes here, it's mate.
Ouch.
So
This is
this was
some nice
this
bit
was
fatness.
more already about understanding the power of the f5 knight in an attacking setup like this, and less so the destruction on g7. But I feel they are almost always walk hand in hand, or one is heavily reliant on the other, because technically if you look at this position, it looks like I might as well just have sacked something on g7 and then hopped on to f5, right?
It does, yeah. It
So
does.
it doesn't matter what the history of the situation was, the motif structure is identical to the examples I showed you prior to this. And since it was my game, I wanted to brag. That's the main point.
How many different mating like patterns were there in this game? Because I think you showed me like 4 or 5 now in the
Well, in
space of
that Knight Age 16, there was
60
probably
seconds.
there was a few more that. Well, obviously, if takes them mate after King E7, Queen G5. Oh yeah, there was this one too. That if the king goes back, then I have got check here and mate here.
Oh man, that's very nice.
But that was pretty much it. Yeah, f6 is mate, and knight f6, knight f5 is mate. So yeah, that was it. That was it.
4, 5. Oh,
Yeah. So yeah, this was Philip.
good stuff.
Our attacking patterns directed onto g7, and since last week we did f7, and this week we did g7, you're not going to believe what next week's agenda is going to be.
Yeah, must be A7, right?
It's gonna be h7 indeed, and that will be mostly what we know as the Greek gift, but we are going
Yes.
to elaborate on that and go beyond.
Okay, cool.
On that
That would be quite interesting.
on that note, dude, I will have to let you go now.
All
We
right,
may have
thanks,
had
Andras.
to. Oh no, we didn't cut it short. Awesome. So it's all G. Now you
Perfect.
are 2/3 of the most fearsome attackers of the Kingside Castle, King Philip. So things should be all a-okay.
All right, I'm gonna have to structure my opening so that I can get these positions more often.
Well, now that I'm teaching you all the attacking patterns, doesn't matter what opening you play, you will get one of them.
Yeah, let's
So
hope.
now your opponents are just dead. They shouldn't even
Thanks,
start playing the
Andras.
game. Just Philip,
What
I
a
will
resign.
resign.
Sounds good.
All right, dude. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will catch you in a week. Whoa, no, I didn't mean to click
Cool.
that. Yeah. Alrighty, you take care, mate, and I will see you next
Cheers.
week. Bye.
All right.